Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparing Partners. Um, Today, we're going to talk about Wi-Fi in the enterprise, and this fits very well in a sort of unplanned thread here on the podcast. So we've been talking about Wi-Fi at home, and today, and we've been talking a lot about Wi-Fi from a public access point of view. Today, we're going to talk about Wi-Fi in the enterprise and coming up cellular on laptops. So uh, I guess, and this is something that I've been very interested is the issue of how to I mean, connectivity is important for everybody everywhere, no matter where they are. But there are some sort of cases which somehow got less attention, especially sort of a lot of adoption, but less attention, I would say. So Wi-Fi, everybody uses Wi-Fi, but we tend to talk about Wi-Fi less than we do talk about 5G. Uh, Despite the fact that most of the traffic goes through Wi-Fi. I quote this all the time, like 80% of the traffic. This doesn't mean that cellular is not important because that 20% is very important, crucial traffic. So it's not just the numbers, we need both. And it's the fact that we have both is what gives us good connectivity. So, said that, today I have with me my guest, is Bart Giordano, who is the president at Ruckus Networks. And he has been working for a very long time on on the enterprise side of things. And Ruckus have been, really at the forefront for how long? Well, he will tell
20,
us in
20 years now, 20
20 years
years.
now. Okay. So he will tell us now because Bart, thank you for being here. First of all, great to be able to even catch up with you as we record a podcast.
Monica, I'm very honored. Thank you very much for having me today.
And well, why don't we get started so you can tell us? So we already know 20 years at Ruckus. So, but tell us a little bit about both Ruckus and what you did in within the company.
Yeah, certainly. So I've been very lucky and fortunate to spend most of my career in and around connectivity. It started way back when at Marvell Semiconductor when I joined the wireless connectivity team there. And about 10 years ago, I joined Ruckus. Ruckus actually is just had its 21st birthday. So I've been with the business about half the time of its history. And through that period, Ruckus has been known for developing enterprise connectivity solutions focused around Wi-Fi and wireless connectivity to enable fantastic experiences for users around the world.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And I remember when I first came across Ruckus, it was like, you know, I would be doing a lot of business plans, right? And so
Sure.
every time everybody say, "Oh yeah, Wi-Fi costs nothing," like $100. Well, back then it might have been $100. Now you can get an access point for what, $10 or whatever. But that's not what Ruckus does. So I remember seeing the prices, and it was really expensive. Let me just say that. But and then, so you say, but why is it? And the thing is that the way you guys think about Wi-Fi is it's a more sophisticated. It's a different
Sure.
than what you have at home, which is
Yeah.
obvious. But clearly, but I remember just being blown away by what you could do that is not, my home access point would not do. But way, like 20 years ago, that at that point. So,
Well, Ruckus really made a name for itself,
mhm.
largely serving public-facing guest Wi-Fi networks, which are quite complicated connectivity problem to solve. In a place like a stadium or arena or that type of venue, or out on a city street in a dense urban environment, or in a hotel or in a school, you can't make any assumptions about the sophistication of the users coming onto the network, which devices they're going to bring. You often have asymmetrical RF environments that are very dynamic. You're dealing with periods of extremely high density, but you're striving for a business outcome that is contingent on a very high quality reliable connectivity, regardless of the environment and regardless of the density of users. And that's how Ruckus made a name for itself, solving for the most difficult challenges that we face from a wireless connectivity perspective in those industries that we target.
Yeah, and this is absolutely crucial because, as I say, it's a real challenge. It's really hard. So it's not it's not just plugging your access point and you're done, which in some case, at home it works that way. Actually, it doesn't. When I talk to Tiago, I mean, it actually doesn't work even at home. You want to have a little bit of sophistication.
Yeah.
However, you don't need it in the same way that you need it in the enterprise. So, and just because it works, thanks to a company like Ruckus, doesn't mean that it's simple. Doesn't mean that
No,
it's, there is a lot of work behind it.
it's actually quite complicated. And I think, if you take the perspective of the way the usage of networks has evolved, first of all, nobody's plugging in anything today. We are universally mobile, whether you're on cellular or on Wi-Fi. That's just the expectation that users have. And we were talking offline earlier. You can sort of take it for granted, particularly when it's working well. But there's a lot of sophistication that goes into designing a robust network and operating that network in a way that yields that fantastic experience for users. It starts with the RF design itself. There's a lot of sophisticated tools that go into RF planning and ensuring that you are maximizing spectral reuse and avoiding co-channel interference. And increasingly, companies like Ruckus are using artificial intelligence in order to be able to not only operate these networks more reliably and in a more automated fashion, but also to automate the troubleshooting and remediation of challenges on those networks. So as they've got more complicated, as there's more users coming on the network, as we've evolved from passive browsing to now every single call is a real-time voice and video call. And you have different classes of devices, not just user devices, but lots of things coming on the network. The networks and the utilization of those networks has got infinitely more complicated. And so we've had to use more advanced techniques and artificial intelligence in order to be able to facilitate the robust and reliable connectivity that, again, when it works, we all take for granted.
Yeah, and when it doesn't, we all go into a panic.
That's right.
And so and as you say, so not only there is some complexity, which just has to do with, say, that just the physical environment, right? But
Right.
then there is an increase in complexity due to the fact that the traffic, not only there is more traffic, it's more complex because you
Right.
need to so like the issues like quality of service and stuff like that, that at the very early days was not really an issue.
Right. I don't know about in your business. Prior to COVID, in the businesses I had been in, every call was a voice call. We would sit around a speakerphone
Yeah.
and we would just talk to each other using audio only. And typically that device was plugged in. Coming out of that now, every company has a culture of video conferencing. And that has dramatic impacts on the nature of the traffic on the network. And all of that traffic is flowing over Wi-Fi typically in the enterprise. So
Yeah.
it is a very different problem to solve. The Wi-Fi standards have evolved to deliver more robustness and capacity. But we also have to deal with all different types of things now coming on the network because it's not just IT technology and user devices, but it's OT technology and the Internet of Things now coming onto the networks, and be able to reliably manage all those devices and traffic securely requires a lot of sophistication in the enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember at the beginning when voice over Wi-Fi came out, people say, well, you can't do voice over Wi-Fi. People were just, like, oh, no, I
Yeah.
can't do it. And now, I mean, I can't possibly imagine a life where you don't use Wi-Fi for voice calls
Yeah,
because it's much
many
more.
exactly. So audio and video traffic, many people don't realize the history of Ruckus when the video the company was first started. There with the unique technology that we had was Beamflex. That's the primary innovation that the company was founded on. And the first use case was to be able to distribute HD video reliably around a home. That's what
Mhm.
the company was started around. In fact, the name of the company was Video 54. It seems strange today to think about solving a problem which we all sort of take for granted. But back then, the idea that you could move HD video wirelessly throughout a home was very novel. And
Mhm.
so as we've evolved to, applications and use cases that require a higher quality of service, the foundational technology for Ruckus has really served us quite well as we've evolved to a world of real-time voice and video for every connection.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the, okay, everything is more complex. You deal with the complexity. Okay, good. So why does the enterprise get out of that? In the sense of what are the advantages in terms of what they're getting out of Wi-Fi?
So I think having flexibility in the applications and devices that come on the network, having the confidence that those devices are being onboarded in a zero trust fashion. So regardless of the user, regardless of the device, regardless of the device type, you can ensure that that is a device that you want on your network because it's safe and secure. And then the robustness and reliability that enables freedom of movement, mobility in the enterprise, and enables us all to communicate freely.
And that sounds like what 5G is also claiming to do. Now, okay, so again, I'm not like Wi-Fi or 5G at all. I mean, I think we need
Sure,
both, and I'm sure you agree with that. But let's talk about like in the enterprise. Every
sure,
enterprise has Wi-Fi.
that's right.
But the argument for instance, for adding CBRS or to add a cellular network within the enterprise for indoor, I mean, in-building or
Sure,
location-based, was that, Wi-Fi is not good enough in terms of security or
sure,
reliability. And it seems like to me that Wi-Fi has gotten so much better and so much in a way similar. It's a very different technology, but on the other hand, it from a from what it delivers to the enterprise, it's much better than it used to be, and it
sure,
is on par with cellular. And so at some point, the question is that if I'm an enterprise and I have my Wi-Fi network, am I better off getting my Wi-Fi network to be more sort of sophisticated and better
sure.
than invest in a CBRS network,
Yeah,
especially
we
with 6 gigahertz available? So that's
sure
kind
we
of like I'm putting everything, but what's your take on that?
So I think we always want to approach this from what problem are we trying to solve for that organization? And our experience is that most connectivity problems in the enterprise are addressed by Wi-Fi today. And you mentioned how Wi-Fi has evolved and it's got more robust. That's been very deliberate by the industry. In fact, 3GPP and 802.11 have borrowed many of the best elements of those specifications, and we've sort of cross-pollinated the technologies, resulting in that robustness. There are a few, I think, scenarios where it makes a lot of sense to consider a private cellular option in the enterprise. And first, I'll say, the world needs lots of spectrum, right? We need licensed spectrum, we need unlicensed spectrum, we need shared spectrum. We just spent the last 10 minutes talking about the ubiquity of wireless connectivity and the fact that we all want to be mobile. What enables that is a very robust and diverse spectrum policy. But in the enterprise, when you think about what are the problems that can be solved by a private cellular solution that maybe aren't addressed by Wi-Fi, for me, they fall in kind of two broad categories. If you need to cover a very, very large area, right? Thousands of square acres of agriculture land, millions of square feet of a distribution center, probably private cellular and shared or licensed spectrum where you can transmit at higher power is going to be more cost effective for you to cover a very, very large area. And we see that today. Private cellular is being deployed in rural areas, mining, gas, and oil utilities, those types of applications where you need to cover a very broad area. Secondly, would be around mobility. I think we all appreciate, Wi-Fi works pretty well when you're walking around and roaming freely from access point to access point. But driving down the freeway, Wi-Fi is probably not the best solution for you to maintain
Mhm.
reliable connectivity. And so that ability to travel very fast and roam freely and maintain a persistent connection, cellular solves that problem very well. So if you have devices in your environment that are mobile and need to maintain persistent connectivity, and they're moving sort of faster than people walk or we run around, then cellular may be a good option for you. So it's really coverage and mobility. If you have very specific challenges around that, not served by Wi-Fi, then private cellular is probably a good option to consider. The other big change that's happened over the last 2 years is um, many of the mobile network operators have backed away from funding traditional DAS systems for in-building cellular coverage, right? And they are now putting the responsibility on the enterprise itself or the commercial property in order to enable in-building cellular coverage. This is a very difficult and expensive problem to solve. And many commercial properties and organizations are considering Wi-Fi calling, right, as an option, and also considering how you can build a neutral host CBRS network in order to provide in-building cellular coverage for those properties where the economics of DAS simply don't make sense. So there's absolutely room in the enterprise for private cellular, but I think it revolves around a few very specific use cases tied to in-building coverage for the macro network, as well as what we discussed related to coverage and mobility.
Yeah, and when I talk to the enterprise, they kind of like the idea to have control over their thing. I mean,
Certainly.
and because in the same way that there is somebody providing electricity to the building, but then they do their own thing with whatever
That's
they
right.
need to have. And I think that because connectivity is so basic, it becomes part of. And yes, there is a cost, but when you think about the cost of running the whole business, well, it's not
Certainly.
you
Well, and
know,
that is the age-old friction between the enterprise or the venue and the mobile network operator. From the mobile network operator's perspective, these are my subscribers, right? They're on my spectrum, they're on my network,
yeah,
so the data is mine. And from the venue's perspective or the enterprise perspective, these people are in my real estate, right?
yeah,
They're at my event and they're enjoying my entertainment, and so they're my customers, and I should have the data. And so there is some tension there, and I think generally enterprise managed Wi-Fi gives the operator of the venue or the enterprise more control, and obviously the traditional licensed spectrum cellular network under the mobile network operators purview gives them more control.
yeah. I mean, I remember to me one thing that happened that sort of changed my mind. Well, not changed my mind. It made me realize that what the situation was is that I was talking to somebody building real estate, and they were comparing the cost of the Wi-Fi network. I can't remember what it was, but so the connectivity network to the cost of carpeting.
Wow.
But when you think
Per
about
square
it,
foot.
yeah, but that's exactly the way they see it. It's just something else you need to put into the building. It's
That's
not,
right.
from an operator, clearly the proposition is completely different.
That's
And
right.
for the enterprise is also different, but connectivity is just becoming such a sort of basic stuff.
Sure. We
Yeah.
often joke that there's surveys out there that say in a certain class of property, say student accommodations or
Oh,
or,
yeah,
or
yeah.
dorm rooms, they would elect to have the hot water turned off before the Wi-Fi.
I'm with that.
It's really become a utility, right? That is absolutely necessary in order to work, live, and play.
Yes, yes, I'm with it. I take the cold shower, but don't remove some connectivity because otherwise I can't do anything. Okay, but so now when you think about like CBRS and 6 GHz, some
Yeah.
people are generally speaking a little bit disappointed, and I'm the first one in that category about the adoption of CBRS. It's been pretty
Yes.
slow and
Yeah.
not what we expected. But I think that to some extent it might be the fact that with 6 GHz becoming available from an enterprise, it's easier and
Sure.
probably cheaper too to expand into 6 GHz. Unless you have, the requirements that you mentioned, like if you have a huge campus and whatever.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I think, Ruckus were very early investors in CBRS, and we're really keen on proliferating that technology throughout the market. I think some of the challenges have been around the spectrum itself, especially when you compare it to 6 GHz. 6 GHz spectrum for Wi-Fi in the US is 1200 megahertz. I mean, that
yes,
is just a
huge.
massive amount of new spectrum. CBRS in the US is 150 megahertz. And even smaller than that, if you consider, priority access layer, and some of the spectrum in CBRS that's actually been auctioned off to various operators. So I think right out of the gate, when you think about CBRS compared to 6 gigahertz, there's just a massive disconnect between the available spectrum, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so um, coupled with the fact that the device ecosystem for CBRS was very slow to proliferate, whereas every device has Wi-Fi today. So there's been some challenges, and then obviously evolution of specifications in Wi-Fi that I think have inhibited broad CBRS adoption outside of the use cases that we've talked about. Having said that, I think there still is room for it, and there's still some exciting applications being developed. But at the end of the day, most organizations are more comfortable operating a traditional Wi-Fi network, feel they have more control. There's less complexity to deal with because you don't have the spectrum allocation service, although you do have frequency coordination in the 6 gigahertz spectrum. So all in all, given the way Wi-Fi has evolved and some of the challenges with CBRS, we do see 6 gigahertz really proliferating very strongly now.
Now, let me ask you this. I just remember that I had a conversation exactly with Ruckus before CBRS was kind of decided, and there was the option that Wi-Fi would operate in the CBRS band, if you remember. Do
Yes.
you
So
think, do you think that in retrospect, do you think that Wi-Fi could have been, used for the CBRS band?
So potentially, however, again, when you look at the available spectrum, right, and now that we have at least in the US and many other regulatory domains, 1200 megahertz available compared to 150 megahertz of CBRS spectrum, just very natural to sort of migrate to the 6 gigahertz spectrum.
So there would have been a distraction, you're saying. 3.5.
Distraction without much utility.
Yeah. Well, I guess that the major issue was that it was only US. So,
That's right.
Wi-Fi has this ambition and successfully to be a global thing. And obviously, 6 gigahertz is not available everywhere, but it's becoming.
No,
Now,
but that's
yeah,
also a challenge, right? The variety of regulatory domains and the inconsistency with the availability of 6 gigahertz, that's relatively new. 2.4
yeah.
and 5 gigahertz, by and large, are symmetrically available almost everywhere in the world, with very few exceptions. 6 gigahertz is very fragmented, right? So I think that inhibits Wi-Fi 7 adoption in a lot of cases. Even if you go to Europe, within Europe, I think the EU has been very short-sighted. You have a very fragmented 6 gigahertz environment,
Yeah.
whereas the EU should have just harmonized how they want to do this across that entire ecosystem. So it is a challenge. It's getting better. I think regulatory agencies are catching up, but even here in the US now, there's some uncertainty with respect to 6 gigahertz policy, and I hope the FCC provides some clarity for us, because it's very difficult, as a business leader and as a business, to make product decisions and think about where you want to invest because of the lack of clarity.
Yeah, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more because see, um, if you remember back in the day, 2.4 and 5, initially it was, it took some time to build the global footprint.
That's
If
right.
you remember, at some point it was 2.4 that was allowed, but not in public spaces. There was like some weirdness that is like
Yeah,
whatever. So with 6 gigahertz, the progress has been slow, but on the other hand, the price is huge because, as you said,
it
there's so
is.
much spectrum. This is like really, game changing kind of thing. Um, so what's happening because US has been the sort of it has been so crucial for 6 gigahertz because it was the
Yeah,
first big country that really allowed all the 6 gigahertz band to be used for Wi-Fi.
that's right. And
I mean, that
and
was huge.
that's right. And really led, this global initiative around the world to make 6 gigahertz available as unlicensed spectrum for Wi-Fi. Um, and the entire industry
Yeah.
has now invested and built products and is promoting this technology. And more recently, there's been some uncertainty introduced because there's been the notion that perhaps part of that spectrum will be rolled back and made available as licensed spectrum for cellular. So um, when the amount of investment and the nature of this industry is such that type of uncertainty inhibits progress. And regardless of what side of the fence you stand on, we just ask that there be consistency and clarity applied to the spectrum policy because it's a very difficult environment to operate in otherwise.
Yeah, and when you think of that, from a US point, I mean, just from a national point of view, we want to promote US technology and
That's
whatever.
right.
It all seems like we are sort of setting the different message, sending a different message out to the market if we roll back the 6 gigahertz band. But more importantly, what really strikes me as very dangerous in terms of even setting a precedent here, and I guess there are some issues with 3.5 with CBRS either, is that whatever you do in terms of deciding what the spectrum is, you can't just change it because
Yeah,
a lot of people have made investments, have made plans. It's you as a vendor, but also you as an enterprise or an
yeah,
operator. You can't just change it
that's
in
right.
the way that you change, well, I don't know, some other things. So isn't that, I mean, and as I say, it's the uncertainty even more than the outcome, which the outcome is bad enough if you remove it, but it's the uncertainty.
Yeah, I think it's created a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And if you think about the design cycle for RF technology, it's a big investment, right? Very big investment, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars of investment to evolve to a new wireless standard, whether it's cellular or whether it's on the Wi-Fi side, and multi years of R&D development, right? Starting with the base chipsets and radios that come from the semiconductor manufacturers to the OEM products that ultimately are built, that's a 5 year plus design cycle. So a lot of money, a lot of time, and the uncertainty with respect to the regulatory policy again inhibits the investment and causes you to pause and say, how should I really move forward with my portfolio given the risk that's introduced when spectrum policy is uncertain.
Yeah, and for the kind of the features of the band, which has relatively short coverage radius,
Sure,
it seems like that's really ideal for unlicensed. But on the other
certainly.
hand, what I do not understand is, okay, I'm in favor of having 6 gigahertz for Wi-Fi. I'm just gonna say, as an analyst, I need to be sort of independent, but I'm not
Very
really.
controversial, Monica.
Well, not really. But hold on. Nobody is stopping mobile operators to use 6 gigahertz for cellular because it's not. You can use unlicensed cellular. You can use 5G.
Yeah,
So nobody's stopping them from deploying it. So it's different because if it becomes licensed, then you cannot use Wi-Fi. But right
that's
now
right.
you can use both.
Yeah,
So, uh,
and we have a
so
we
to
have
me,
a
it's like, what's the
mechanism
problem?
we have a
You know?
mechanism with frequency coordination to arbitrate that.
Yeah, so but you don't see any interest in that, or do you?
Um, no, I think the interest is from an operator's perspective in a more traditional model, right? Licensed
Mhm.
spectrum
Yeah.
that I control. I know I'm the only tenant in that spectrum. I can transmit at very high power. So I think, for the same reasons that CBRS has faced challenge gaining adoption with traditional operators, six gigahertz unlicensed would as well.
Yeah. Although I've heard that a lot, well, some operators in the US are using CBRS, they're just not too vocal about it. So, which is like, well, they do whatever. When you have a phone, you don't know, as a
Yeah,
user,
right.
you don't
It
know.
should be transparent to the users. I can tell you, one of the trends that we see is with the advent of new mobile operators, who
Hmm.
are MVNOs, who are
Yes.
licensing spectrum from a traditional operator. Obviously, it's very difficult to build a robust business just on spectrum that you're leasing. And so, the calculus is, how can I make other spectrum available that is more cost effective to operate on, that I can offload my mobile data traffic to? And so both CBRS and Wi-Fi are being used for mobile data offload by these MVNOs who are trying to expand their subscriber base of mobile customers and subscribers. And so that's a big opportunity now for Wi-Fi and 6 gigahertz, given the amount of spectrum that we've talked about, for these MVNOs to be able to build infrastructure that will enable them to offload data traffic from their subscribers onto more cost-effective spectrum.
Actually, you raise a very important point here. Operators like Google Fi, they just use Wi-Fi extensively. So
Yep.
I guess that what you're saying, which is actually I never thought about it in those terms, is that instead of having NRU, so unlicensed in cellular,
Right.
so using 6 gigahertz for unlicensed. What operators are doing, the MVNOs, are just using Wi-Fi
Yep.
for basically the kind of services that traditionally are provided by cellular.
Yeah. They want to
Yeah.
maximize the time
Yeah.
that they are not transmitting data over their leased spectrum.
And
And so
sometimes
you
they
look,
pay for it. I mean, so
that's
like
right.
so companies like Helium are just have a model where you just you can use the infrastructure out there. So I think that that's going to be very interesting, which
Yeah,
is
it does enable some unique business models and opportunities for venues, and other properties that have excess Wi-Fi capacity, to be able to monetize that capacity back to an operator, either a traditional MNO or an MVNO, who wants to offload their subscribers, either because they lack sufficient macro cellular coverage in
Mhm.
that venue, or because they want to leverage cheaper spectrum than their primary leased spectrum.
Yeah, no, I think that this is so quite interesting, and it sort of go it's you know we don't talk as much as we should have about that because this is really like a real, we often tend to talk about 5G, 6G to,
Yeah,
like you can't take it anymore because everybody's talking about it. Like you kind of feel fatigued. And then you have things like, again, Wi-Fi, which everybody uses. But I think that it's just like, it's the success of Wi-Fi that you just take it for granted that it's like, well, what do we need to talk about it? And
yeah,
there's a
certainly.
lot of changes out there. So our time is pretty much up, but I wanted to ask you, when you look at what is what is coming up, what's the best thing happening to Wi-Fi right now?
So obviously we're in the midst of a major technology transition, but I think, we touched on how the utilization and usage of enterprise networks is evolving dramatically. So beyond just the major technology transitions, Wi-Fi 6 to 6E to 7, believe it or not, we're already talking about Wi-Fi 8, which will be here in the next few years before we know it. Um, the increased complexity within enterprise networks is really driving the industry to adopt new techniques and tools, really around artificial intelligence and agentic AI, to be able to more effectively operate and automate the operation of networks. So I think some of the most exciting investments for Ruckus are in that area where we can use these frameworks in order to, provide robust connectivity at a much lower total cost of ownership, because as the network complexity increases, you don't have to sort of linearly scale your staff in order to manage those networks, given the way we're able to automate network management, configuration, and operation using artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And yeah, because, as the network becomes more complex, you have to spend, I mean, there is more to manage. As I
Yeah.
say, the very basic, very basic thing. How do you do it? You need automation.
And I
Otherwise, you
think
go crazy.
IT organizations
Yeah.
today, they don't want to be investing a lot of resources in their networking infrastructure. They're focused on driving AI adoption in their own enterprise and focused on cybersecurity. And so it's really incumbent upon us as an industry serving the enterprise to ensure you can still build this very robust platform for connectivity, which really ultimately drives a business outcome for your organization, but without having to linearly scale your investment as that complexity grows. And that's really what Ruckus is focused on today.
Yeah, and I guess from the enterprise point of view, like AI, automation, and all of that, makes them much more dependent on connectivity.
Certainly.
Way back, it was just like the connectivity was a nice to have. Right now, it's becoming more and more absolutely essential. If the network goes down, you don't do anything.
Yeah, it's
Everything
a it's
stops.
it's it's a revenue impacting
Yeah,
situation, and so you need to maximize uptime and reliability, and you need to be able to do that at scale in an automated fashion.
excellent. On those things, we need to stop here. But Bart, thank you so much. It was great talking to you and a lot of excellent insights.
It was a fantastic discussion, Monica. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And all of you listening, thank you so much for following us. And do subscribe to the Sparing Partners feeds if you